Okay, we just got done starting MySQL. We wrote a few commands. We wrote a few SQL commands. We created the database. We also created the table. We saw that we can type these commands in the MySQL command line, but it's not very user-friendly. So we're going to switch over to MySQL Workbench and set that up. So if I go back to my applications, you should already have MySQL Workbench installed. So I'm going to go to my apps, open up MySQL Workbench, and you'll see something similar. Okay, they may have done a few updates, but you're going to see something similar to this. So I have a bunch of connections here. You probably don't have any connections at this time, so that's fine. I'm going to click on this plus arrow here, right by MySQL connection. So I'll click on plus, and we're going to connect to that database. Now, the first thing, we're going to give it a name. So this is our CS2830 web server. That's what we called our server on AWS. And the connection method, it's going to be TCP, but we're going to do it over SSH. So I'm going to select over SSH here. And I have to type these parameters. So we need to put the SSH host name. Well, if I come back to our AWS console, the SSH host name is our public DNS. So if I copy the public DNS, come back, make sure you leave this :22. Okay, the :22 is important to say it's over SSH. That's the port 22. So right above the :22, before the :22, I'm going to paste our public DNS. Okay, so I paste EC2, and then make sure you get rid of that space. So I did a backspace here, make sure there's no space, :22. And our SSH username. Well, if I come back, our SSH username is here, EC2-user. So look on your console, see what your username is. If you set up a LAMP stack like we did, it should also be EC2-user. And then we need our SSH password. We don't have one, but we do have a key file, and that's going to be your PIM file. So if I come back here, here's your PIM file. Okay, this is the one I named mine. You should see yours as well. So I'll come back. I'll locate that PIM file. Okay, so here's my PIM file. I've selected it. I'm going to click on Open. So now I'm able to SSH to this machine, but then we need to log on to the MySQL server, which we started. So this is going to be localhost because it's on the same EC2 instance. So I have localhost here. Keyword localhost is used to refer to the server that you're currently on. And that's actually a quiz question a while back. The MySQL port is 3306. We can leave that there. And then the username for MySQL admin is going to be root. So we can leave that there. If I do a test connection, okay, so I put my public DNS, I put my EC2-user, so my username, I selected my key pair so I can SSH, change this to localhost, click on test. If everything goes through correctly, you may get a warning, but if I do continue, you should get this success message. Okay, if you get this success message, you can click on OK, and now you should see your new server here. Okay, so CS2830 web server, if I double click on it, it's going to open up an SQL editor, okay, which is nice because it actually highlights my keywords for me. Let's see, I have it in dark mode. Looks like they don't really have it set up for dark mode, but that's okay as long as you can read it. So here is my SQL editor, and I can actually type my SQL commands here. So what did we do before? The first thing we did was show databases. So you see it starts to color code the words. Now, I have two ways to run this SQL code. The first way is this first lightning bolt, which is going to execute the selected portion of the script or everything if there's no selection. Well, I'm not going to run everything. I'm going to run line by line. So if I go here to the second one, you'll see this executes the statement under the cursor. So it only executes the current line. So if I run this one, I usually use the second lightning bolt. You'll see my databases. Okay, so we created 2830. Remember, every time you log in, you have to use, and then the database. So you have to select the database. Okay, so I'll do the second lightning bolt, and you'll see that that was successful with this check mark down below. And now I can do something like show tables. So if I do the second lightning bolt with the little cursor there, only run the current line, you'll see I have food stock there. If I do a select star, which is selecting all the attributes like we learned in the last video, from food stock, run the second lightning bolt, we can see all the data that we insert. So we insert a bunch of data in. We'll continue that lecture. Now what's nice here is I can actually open up the SQL file. So if I go open, you'll see I put an SQL file in the lectures. So if you go to enter the database, I have a database SQL here. So if I open this up, let's see, we don't need to save that because that's just testing. You'll see the code here. Okay, so I have, this is my SQL file loaded from the lecture. I have some notes. Let's see here. Not sure why it's not liking these. Okay, but you may need to fix these comments. So I have prerequisites. I have some notes. Okay, so I did dash dash and space. Seems to be working. Okay, so I fixed the comments up. You can see I have a bunch of comments there. Okay, we did these commands already. So if I do show databases, here it is. If I do create, we've already created it. Okay, we're on use 2830. So I can select the database. I can show tables like we did. The other one I haven't done is I can do a describe. So if I do a describe and then the table, it'll tell you what the table is. So I have an ID, it's an int, and if I have some extra attributes for that, if I have some extra, okay, an ID which is an int, it may be a primary key or whether I can put a null, so I may have some extra features. So I can describe the table. We did a create table already, but we can put that command in here. So we did a create. And remember, the keywords are not case sensitive, so I can also do lowercase. So we created food stock. We put the ID as an int. The name is a varchar with 50 characters. Quantity is an int, and the cost is a float. So you see, this is much nicer because it's more of a text editor. And what's nice is if I mess something up, so let's say I forget a comma here, it'll give you an error message. So say, hey, I see there's no comma here. It gave me that error message. But in the MySQL terminal, it doesn't tell you until you run the command. And after you run the command, it's not very precise. It doesn't really tell you too much information. So we've inserted data into the database already. We've also looked how to do the selects. Okay, we've inserted in this data. Now what we haven't talked about is here. Okay, so if I want to insert, let's say I don't want to insert the ID, I only can insert 3 of the attributes. So if I try to run this command, you'll see I get an error. So on MySQL Workbench, the error is very clear. And what's nice is it tells you the response code. So column count doesn't match. Now that's fine. Sometimes I don't know all the attributes and I can't send up all the attributes. So if I want to do this, we can actually specify what attributes we're going to do. Here, I only know 3 of them, so I can put the attributes there and then put the values. So then it'll let me insert. And this is useful, especially if the attributes are not in the correct order. So let's say ID is last, but ID is first in the table. Well, I can put the attributes there. As long as these attributes match with these values, it'll get inserted into the correct position. If I just do it like this, then the attribute, these values must match the available attributes. They must have the same number and be the same type. So it must be in the exact same order. If you don't want to have it that strict, I can put the attribute's name here. I can have a different order, or maybe not send up all the attributes if that table will allow it. So if I do a select, you'll see I'm still able to select, but the ID now is equal to null because I didn't send an ID up. So if I insert this in, we've seen this in the last lecture, but if I insert two different types with the same ID and then do a select, you'll see it allows me to do that. I can insert two ID5s. I also have two ID1s. So it's not a very good table structure. Okay, you shouldn't be able to have two IDs with the same value. Otherwise, when I try to select one item, it'll be very hard to select. Like here, I have two bitter bones. How can I select? Usually you do select star from food stock where ID is equal to 1. And I only want to pull back one item. But here it's going to pull back 2. And same with if ID is equal to 5, it'll also pull back 2 elements. So the original table structure is not very good. It's too open. We should create some rules so we don't allow this to happen. So if I go down, okay, we're actually going to create a new table. So right here, we're going to create a new table with specific rules. So if you continue to the next video, we'll redefine our table, make some constraints, and set up a better table structure. We'll see you in the next video.